So, welcome to BelTalks. It's part of BelDOCS Film Festival, where we have conversations with filmmakers. So, first of all, thank you for this lovely film. And so, last year we opened the program at the Museum of Modern Art with Now at Last. That was the first film. This year we're going to close the program with Krabi 2562. So, actually, that's a Buddhist year, right? That's
Yeah,
2019.
exactly. Yeah, that's the current, well, last year.
Last year in Buddhist calendar. So the
Yeah.
full title would be like the area and the year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where we shot it and the year. But we like the sound of that title because it yeah, it also sounds kind of sci-fi, as if
Mm.
we're perhaps talking about the future as well. And which
We
makes
kind of
sense
progress,
because the
no?
time the film sort of slips through different time periods. So maybe it's also
Yeah. So
ancient, 60,000 years ago. And yeah, but thanks for showing it anyway. And thanks for closing the program with it.
I wanted to maybe just to begin with comparing these two films just slightly, and both of them interfere with the concept of time, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, in my opinion, Now at Last would be like about how the passing of time is relative to different, not
Like
species, yeah, like
different experiences of it, or
experiences.
different perceptions of time. Yeah, because it's, in a way, Now at Last is trying to get you into a different frame of an experience of time
Yeah.
to perhaps the way that we normally experience time.
And Krabi reveals different layers of time at once. So it's like a fusion
Mm.
at some points. So that's what's the most interesting parts, actually, and most challenging parts were these fusion parts where you have prehistoric and modern and just like layers colliding at some point. So maybe we can start with that, with this idea. That was the idea from the beginnings of the collaboration between the two of you. And
Um, I think it came pretty early on. The project started with Krabi itself, the place. Actually, I was invited to make a film there for the Thailand Biennale, and I asked Anosha if she wanted to collaborate because we're old friends, and I really love her films, and we've talked over the years, and I, I feel like we have some real shared. Um, our films are very different, but we have some real shared affinities and interests. And I think one of those things is time and thinking about different ways of perceiving time and fracturing it. Um, and So yeah, we went to Krabi to do a research trip, and we were there and meeting different people and seeing these different places, and and also hearing about the importance of these the remnants of um, early humans in Krabi. They they say that they're the earliest remains in Southeast Asia of early humans. So it's a really important kind of thing for that area. So we wanted to include that, and so then we were, in a way, trying to think about how to bring all these different people and ingredients together, and thinking about how we can use cinema as a kind of time machine, um, and make connections between these different people, but they're not really necessarily that obvious, the connections. Well, that's when we brought in this kind of character, this fictional character of this mysterious woman, as a way to kind of navigate around these different kind of people, places, periods, but also within the film, like the things that people talk about when they're talking about history or dates and stuff.
Yeah.
They also the stories don't always add up. Like in one part of the film, he'll be talking about, oh, I've been in this house for 80
Exactly.
years.
Yeah.
And then the next time we see him, he's like, yeah, well, I moved in here when I was
14.
15. So nothing quite adds up, and we were really interested in that kind of, this sort of slipperiness of memory and history within these different time periods. And I think that's something that both of us have done, especially Anosha with her previous film, By the Time It Gets Dark. She's really kind of fracturing and moving backwards and forwards in time. So you're kind of, in a way, I think we were thinking this is a more realistic way of dealing with trying to, two outsiders trying to represent a place and make a kind of portrait of a place, is that it's made up of these kinds of fragments of information. Like, you're never going to be able to know the place wholly as an outsider. So you're kind of picking up on bits of things that people say, bits of things that you see, trying to build up an almost like cubist image of this place. So I think that's kind of how we approached it.
And in terms of writing the text or with this communication with the locals, was it controlled in a way? Was it pre-written? Was it? I mean, it's obviously a hybrid because the main character is there to connect the places, as you said. But these people with whom she interacts, they're real. They're like they're non-actors.
Right.
I mean, so was the text written, and then you were looking for the people to represent the text, or was it improvised?
It's a kind of mix. So we found the people first, and then we brought in this fictional character, and then we went away and sort of wrote the film roughly as the kind of structure that we wanted, which was actually originally when we wrote it, it was more of a linear structure. There was less kind of moving backwards and forwards, and the thing, the kind of interview bits and the bits where people are these real people are talking. They were kind of mix of things that we wrote, but then they're things that we wrote based on things that they told us. So, for example, when the hotel receptionist is talking about ghosts, I mean, we were just chatting with her, and she mentioned that quite casually, that she sees ghosts, and it's this kind of everyday thing for her, which was kind of wonderful, because in a way the film is littered with different kinds of ghosts, that was another important thing for us, is that the different ways of storytelling that also go about creating an image or a history, or that give a place its soul, its spirit, and so the story about her seeing ghosts, we got her to like tell these stories a number of times, and then we wrote it so that she could say it all in one go, and then rehearsed it a few times, and then it's kind of, it's a mix of kind of written and a little bit of improvised, but actually because we're shooting on film and our budget was incredibly low and our shooting schedule was really short, that you can't actually improvise that much because you just end up wasting loads of film. So in a way you have to have a certain amount of control over non-actors. So it's more about kind of rehearsing with them and thinking about the things that they would normally say, but then trying to like encapsulate them a bit more, because non-actors can just keep rambling on the way I am now.
Yeah, I like the guy from the cinema very much. And the fact that the cinema becomes some kind of temple also.
Exactly. That was one of the first places that we saw, and it was and met him, and with his one-sided beard.
Yeah.
And
he's great.
Yeah, he's just an amazing character, and his whole story of having been a projectionist there, and now he just looks after the place, even though it's been empty for 20 years, and he looks after those birds. He makes sure that nobody goes into the cinema and steals the nests, because the nests are used for medicine, sometimes in soups. So he kind of continues to go back to the cinema even though it's not working, almost like a ghost of the cinema himself. And then within the cinema, you've got those birds in front of the screen, which is just like the most amazing 3D cinema. You can just sit and watch that for ages. And so, when we first saw that, we were obviously like, this needs to be in the film. Whatever the film is, this person and this place needs to be in it. And then slowly it became like another character in a way, that the cinema. And of course, we're both obsessed with cinema, so it's perfect. We've both made films about filmmaking and about cinema. And so I think it's something that we kind of return to, as a kind of homage to this thing that we love, which is sort of consistently under threat. As we know, like cinemas have closed down all over the place, and now we've got this annoying COVID, which is shutting down screenings even more. So in a way, it's quite interesting to think about Krabi in terms of this virus, because it's a place.
That was one of my questions, actually. How do you? The fact that it's a crowded touristic place in general, but you didn't treat it like that. You treat it in a more mystical way.
Yeah.
So basically, what you said, like the buildings become characters, people disappear, reappear, and then you ask yourself, is this just like some kind of projection of the mind of some of the characters, or of the mind of the directors? So I wanted to ask you if you it looks like deserted area in a way, even though it was not, but now it is. So if you can maybe reflect.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Anosha about this the other day, because she said it's really interesting in Thailand now. She's in Thailand, and although she hasn't been to Krabi recently, she can imagine that it really is. It's probably very quiet and very different to normal, because Thailand has been very strict with stopping tourism. So it must be a completely different landscape now. And yeah, like you say, probably a little bit more like the place that we show in the film. Almost like the film is a premonition of this kind of post-tourism. I mean, we were interested in it in a place because it is a heavy tourist place, and it's going to get heavier. It's growing. And part of the whole Biennale, the art Biennale, is just a kind of semi-corrupt way of attracting more tourists, maybe a slightly different kind of tourist, but and there's all this kind of faux eco-tourism as well, like green tourism, which is, you know, kind of a joke in a way. But yeah, I suppose what we were interested in was kind of looking behind the scenes of the town, like trying to find characters who play a role in that tourist industry, but they're not really seen. You know, like a hotel receptionist, or you know, a handyman, or you know, these or the tour guide as well. I think the tour guide is really important character in the film, and in some ways she's another main character, because she's based on the guide who took Anosha and me around originally, who was really important, you know, because she was the one. We said to her, we want to see Krabi, but we want to see like the secret Krabi, you know, the kind of behind the scenes. Yeah, so she kind of took us to a lot of these places that ended up being in the film, and then the girl who plays the tour guide in the film, she's not actually a tour guide. She's our casting person. So, you know, the roles sort of change around. The person who was originally our guide, she plays the cinematographer in the commercial shoot on the beach. So, and the costume person is the one in the water holding the umbrella. So, you know, we were kind of using people using a lot of the crew as well as like doubles in the film. The assistant director is one of the cavemen. So that, you know, they're all.
So it was like a very intimate crew. Crew.
Very
you like doing films like that in general.
Yeah, I do. I like to try and keep things as small as possible, and you know, obviously, when you make things cheaply, it can be more difficult. But you also have a lot more freedom. You know, you if the budget is low, then you can, you know, you're not being told by producers to do certain things that you might not be into. So I like to try and have a lot of control, and also, you know, it's important to have a good time. I think making a film like this, we try and make everyone happy, and you know, that's one of the reasons why I like to make films of people, you know, the portraits of people and stuff, is because it's an excuse to actually spend time with interesting people that I want to spend time
you're
with.
also very interested in these mythological elements, not only in this film but in general, and also in geographical distant places, remote places, history, also prehistorical. So maybe we can reflect on that a little bit. So it's kind of something that goes with your work.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes firstly from a place. I like to travel. I like to move around. Normally I live quite a kind of itinerant kind of life. I'm moving around, and then I see places, and then I become like there's a spark with a place, and I want to spend more time there and kind of get deeper into its into the rocks and uh, yeah, and I like thinking about how humans have interacted with nature, and a lot of that is to do with giving them stories and putting stories onto nature, like mythologies, and it's that think there's some kind of connection between the deep time of the geologist's eye, thinking about what's in the rocks, what's in the, buried, and then these other kinds of stories that have built up over the centuries of people living really closely to a place, and they start to imagine things. So I was just reading yesterday about this hill that I'd just been walking on, and it's called the Devil's Dyke, and there's all these like beautiful stories about this hill was produced when the devil was he was walking and he'd hit his toe and he got annoyed, and then he threw some rock, and this created this mountain. And it's just like some kind of silly story about the devil, and but it's really evocative, and I like to think about that in relation to the what the geologist says about this same rock. So, I mean, that's just a dumb example of how I start to get sort of obsessed with a place and start to try and, so the place is never just like a kind of background to a film. It's, it's about a relationship between the humans who inhabit it and that place.
And don't you think that myths in general, myths are, how should I say, reflections of what people could not explain by logic or science? So,
yeah,
for
exactly.
example, in this film, there is this legend of about the beach and the stone beach. So I guess it's also interesting how you deconstruct myths in all this process.
Yeah, exactly.
Deconstruction of mythology, but trying to understand it at the same time. That's something that's really tempting.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose in a way I'm also I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I like the idea that there's things that can't quite explain, and in a way, I think I'm attracted to things like that. Where there's maybe like multiple explanations of a place, and it's not quite so easily defined. I don't know. Mysteries. but also, I mean, there's something kind of comical about that beach, which we also really like. And it's so that story, the story about the sea serpent and the guy turning everything to stone, and that's a really old story, right?
Yeah.
Um, that, you know, we don't know exactly how far back that goes, but the shrine itself with all these phalluses,
It's new.
um, yeah, it's pretty recent. It's like it's from the 70s, but a lot of people think that it's really old in relation to this story. But actually, it's just you know, it's something that started almost like a joke, and then it grew, and because of tourism, it continues to grow. People add penises, and you know, and it's like people imagine that this is an ancient fertility shrine, but it's not. It's like, so that's also really interesting to us, how like these mythologies can be like developed in, you know, almost contemporary times as well, and how they get the reality of them and the actual history of them gets kind of completely warped.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was also thinking it was it was much older.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As most people do, and I think that's another thing which I'm quite interested in, and like something I'm working on now is it's actually set really far in the future. I'm just writing it, and I'm trying to think of like mythologies that might start today, you know, or like mythologies about our time in 800 years time. Like what kind of warped histories and memories of this time could there be? And yeah, so I think it's yes. I mean, I think it's just a sort of general interest in like how history is so unreliable. History and memory are really unreliable, and you know, as we know, that kind of history's often been written by a very particular few, and yeah, I guess I like to bring that into the films, and sort of bring in the uncertainty of it, and the kind of unreliability of any kind of narration, any kind of claim to reality and and knowledge in a way.
That sounds very interesting, the new project you're working on.
Yeah, I just hope I can get it made.
I was thinking, this is just, how do you say, it's off topic, just 20 seconds. I was thinking the same thing once about how if the aliens come, I mean, in maybe 1,000 or 2,000 years, and they find something very trivial, some object, you know, they find a bottle of Coke or you know, and then how they would maybe reinvent what happened here in much different than it was, and
Yeah,
they would maybe find some shrines which were meaningless to us.
exactly. Yeah.
So that's yeah.
I mean, they could find, you know, you find a trash heap
Yeah,
with old bits of washing machines, and
yeah.
this could be, you know, considered something that we worship. So yeah, it's like flipping things around. Um, yeah, depending on um, your position. I really like this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, another film I made last year was called Ghost Strata. I mean, if anyone is watching Mubi, it's going to be on Mubi in October, I think.
Okay, great. But it also has a part from Krabi in Ghost Strata, right?
It does, yeah, the last part. So it's a kind of diary-ish film. I made a little film for each month of the year, and the last month is the filming of Krabi, so kind of behind the scenes. But the term ghost strata, it's explained in the film in the March section. I think it's March. There's a really great geologist called Jan Zelasowitz, and he's talking about how in certain places, when you're standing looking at rocks, as a geologist, you know that there was maybe some rocks over here, but they're no longer there. They've been washed away or something. And where there's this gap, this is what he calls a ghost strata. So it's not a solid strata, it's a ghost. And I really like this idea of like, I mean, I've always liked the idea of ghosts, I suppose, and this relates it pretty much to mythologies and histories as well, that ghosts being the things that are simply missing, but there's clues to what was there before, you know. So I'm interested in these clues and these gaps between things, and how we attempt to fill them. And we often fill them with stories of some such. And yeah, I think this is something that is that I've approached in a lot of films, and I think it's there in Krabi. You know, these kinds of gaps between things, which you know, sometimes we have an answer, but sometimes we don't, and you kind of go down a road, and a lot of people can find that frustrating in a film, because we're so used to in narrative film to have answers for everything. You know, everything is neatly tied up in a plot. But Anosha and I are not really that interested in that. You know, we're interested in how life really is, which is actually not so neat. You know, I don't know about you, but like, my life is just full of these fragments of things that you're kind of attempting to hold together, and you're going off on one tangent and then another, and it's very fragmentary, and so that's what that's kind of what we're trying to do in that film, is reach something which is doesn't always have the answers, but in some way is still satisfying as a film to watch, because you can make these connections between things, and you know, you see something and then later on you see something that kind of folds back on itself.
Like a warp in space, no?
Exactly.
What do you say, wormhole, no?
Yeah, like a wormhole. Exactly. It's a film full of wormholes.
Yeah. Also, the thing about ghosts is that they are immortal, right?
Think so, yeah.
So maybe, I mean, now we're talking about Krabi in particular, but this place is also immortal in a way, with its time span. That's what happened in.
Exactly. I mean, this is what, as I said at the beginning, this was also why we liked this title, because even though it's the Buddhist calendar, it also, if we think about it as you know, the Western calendar, it points to another 500 years in the future, and yeah, I mean, we're in a way we're thinking about Krabi over a really long period of time as something that moves beyond, you know, our normal lifespan, but still it's still essentially a film about how humans shape and change and evolve a landscape. You know, so when the old boxer is sitting looking out of his house onto that field, you know, this is what he looks at every day. And he says, oh, you know, I don't like it in the town. It's too noisy. I love to sit here, just, you know, watching the world go by. It's nice and quiet. but actually he says it's nice and quiet, but you hear like some trees being cut in the background. You know, it says even though this is his quiet area, you still have this oral sense that actually things are still changing. You know, they're always changing. When it comes to humans, you know, we're just relentless. You know, you know, savaging of landscapes, and yeah, and the sound is really important in the film. In that, you know, we worked with the really great sound designer Ernst Carroll, who he comes out of that sensory ethnography lab in Harvard, did Leviathan and stuff like that. And so we had our sound recordist, who was like the sync sound recordist, the kind of more standard doing, you know, he was recording what the camera was recording. And then Ernst had complete freedom to record kind of around the area of where we were filming. So then when it comes to edit, we could then we don't have to just stick to like the sync sound. We can then move off like further, which I think, you know, it's really important for the way that we want the film to be experienced, you know, that it's not, that takes it away from being a documentary in a way, a document. You know, as soon as you start to like play with sound and kind of manipulate the sound so that it's doing something else to your brain and sort of changes what you're looking at. I think that, you know, kind of in a way, we want to open up the image by injecting this other layer, which is sometimes unconscious, you know, but or sometimes it's really very, you know, kind of loud and deliberate, like the sound of the marching. You know, when we see this woman who disappears, we hear the sound of this military marching, and that's kind of ominous. You know, and Thailand is actually, even though it's the land of smiles or whatever they call it, you know, it's very friendly to tourists. It's actually like a pretty fierce monarchy, police state. You know, they're quite a controlling government, and you know, people do disappear. People get disappeared if they say something bad about the king. They can be, you know, just taken away without any trial. So in a way, we wanted this kind of unseen menace in the film as well. So it's another kind of layer.
Yeah, I didn't think about the connection between the government, the king, royal family, and the disappearings. But wow, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like why we wanted that that long shot at the beginning of the kids doing, you know, doing the national anthem or whatever, and the prayer to the king and everything. You know, it's a kind of sign of this, how early they try to indoctrinate people, you know, to this system.
I wanted to ask you, maybe now this is out of the topic stream, how should I say, but the scene with the how do you say, these people in suits? Suits, protection.
Yeah, hazmat suit. Yeah, the forensic.
Forensic, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just about, I want to ask you about that scene, the idea of that scene at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we wrote it and it was more kind of linear, that maybe had a more clearer plot place. But then when we decided to kind of shift the structure around, it really does. It seems to come out of nowhere. But we wanted to keep it because I think it's I think it was a sign for something not good happening, and maybe it's related to the woman disappearing, but it's a kind of
So it's like an introduction to.
Yeah, but we really didn't want to make it. We didn't want to make anything clear in terms of her narrative, like whether, she just leaves or whether she disappears, whether she's a ghost. She may be. She may not even exist.
It's like a warning sign.
Exactly, like a warning sign. Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's the same. I think also with the Neanderthals, we were kind of interested in like how we're not even sure ourselves, like where they are in time. I mean, is this a flashback to 60,000 years ago?
Or maybe.
Yeah, or is it? I mean, have they just been living on this island, and nobody's disturbed them for thousands of years until a commercial crew come along, or there's various options. I think we were for a lot of the film we want to keep the options open for the viewer, so that I always like films where there's room for me to make some decisions about the meaning of things. I get a bit tired of. I still watch these like Hollywood films and stuff, but I find them quite boring because everything is. Everything is explained and it's all
so predictable, no?
Incredibly predictable. We were watching a film last night and I was saying lines before they were said. It was incredible. They're entertaining, but it's like, you're after they finish, that's it. It's like they don't really stick around for long. We want to make films that are, sometimes they might even annoy you, but then they stick in your head and then you keep thinking about them and then maybe you want to watch them again. And, it's, in the end, I think, we want to be more generous as filmmakers in allowing the viewer to kind of maybe participate a little bit more.
Exactly. That's the point of Meteor's program. We show this this kind of cinema which is maybe more challenging and hybrid forms, and so yes, I can agree with you on that. So maybe
thanks for including the film.
Time to say goodbye.
Yeah.
With this line, so thank you so much for this great conversation. It even went past Krabi. We did like work on it inside the conversation. So I hope we will see many more of your work.
Yeah, thanks. Well, hopefully I'll make it there one day.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will. Yeah.
Okay.
All right then.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Hope it goes well.
Bye.